Welcome to Lesson 41, the Stage 5 Capstone. Over the past several lessons, we've worked through the core network services that quietly hold modern infrastructure together: DNS, DHCP, NAT, QoS, multicast, time synchronization, and management protocols. Today, we pull all of that into a single coherent operational picture before we step into Stage 6 and begin layering security on top. Here's how we'll spend our time together. First, we'll weave all 8 Stage 5 lessons into one mental model, so the services stop feeling like separate topics and start behaving like a system. Then, we'll map those services to a realistic deployment order, the sequence you'd actually follow in standing up a network. After that, we'll work a real ticket, a greenfield enterprise services design. And we'll close with a quick self-check and a preview of Stage 6, where security takes center stage. Let's take stock of what Stage 5 actually covered. We started with DNS, the naming layer that makes everything else addressable. Then DHCP and IPAM for handing out and tracking addresses at scale. NAT and PAT gave us the bridge between private and public space. QoS taught us to treat traffic by priority, and multicast showed us efficient one-to-many delivery. We closed with NTP keeping every device on the same clock, and the management trio, SNMP, SysLog, and NetFlow, giving us visibility into all of it. Knowing the pieces isn't enough. The order you bring them up matters. Time comes first because logs, certificates, and authentication all collapse without it. Then DHCP, so devices can even get an address, followed by DNS, so those addresses have names. NAT bridges you to the internet, monitoring goes in once services are live, and QoS and multicast come last, only when a real workload demands them. With the order settled, here are the principles that separate hobby setups from production networks. Always run services in pairs or more. A single DNS or NTP box is a future outage waiting to happen. Keep internal clients talking to internal resolvers, never straight out to 8.8.8.8. Authenticate your management plane with SNMP v3, NTS, and DNSSEEK because plain text is an open door. Monitor the monitoring itself and write down what depends on what. When something breaks at 3 a.m., that dependency map is what saves you. Let's ground all of this in something you'll actually see land in your inbox. Brief 5023, a new Budapest office, 150 users across 3 floors, Wi-Fi and VoIP everywhere, a single gig uplink, an internal app, file shares, and PCI DSS auditors who want centralized logs with accurate timestamps. 3 weeks on the clock. Every service we've discussed shows up here. DNS resolvers, DHCP scopes, QoS for voice, NTP for those audit timestamps, and a management stack to tie it together. That's the design we're about to walk through. Here's the stack we're proposing, built bottom up. Foundational services first, optional layers on top. NTP anchors everything with 2 Stratum 3 routers pulling from 3 public sources. DHCP runs on the router itself with per-floor scopes and failover. And DNS uses 2 internal resolvers forwarding out to public servers. NAT is straightforward PAT on the edge. QoS gives voice its own low-latency queue at 1/3 of the WAN. And management ships SNMP v3, SysLog, and NetFlow up to a cloud SIEM. Note the 2 design decisions at the bottom, voice on its own VLAN with EF marking, and DHCP options 150 and 42 doing the quiet work of bootstrapping the phones. Before you cut over, map the blast radius. NTP sits at the top because if clocks drift, certificates expire, Kerberos tickets fail, and your logs become impossible to correlate. Slow, ugly, multi-hour damage. DNS failure is the opposite. Seconds to total outage since name resolution underpins web, email, and auth. DHCP gives you a grace window. Leases survive for days, and NAT loss kills outbound internet but leaves internal services running. Document this graph before go live, not during the incident. Now it's time to test yourself. 10 questions, 30 seconds each. If you stall on any of them, the lesson reference is right there on the right. From L34 through L40, don't just think the answer, say it out loud, as if you were explaining it to a teammate at the whiteboard. If Dora, Pat, DSCP, or Stratum levels feel fuzzy, that's your signal to loop back before we move on. And with that, stage 5 is in the bag. You can now stand up DNS hierarchies, hand out addresses with DHCP across subnets, translate private networks through NAT and PAT, shape traffic with QoS so voice stays clean, deliver multicast streams using IJMP and PIM, and keep the whole estate honest with synchronized time and proper observability. That's the full services layer, the quiet machinery every working network leans on. Which brings us naturally to what's next. Stage 6 is all about defense. 8 lessons covering security fundamentals, stateful firewalls and next-gen filtering, ACLs, VPNs, an IPsec deep dive, TLS on the wire, and zero trust architecture before wrapping with a capstone of its own. If Stage 5 taught the network how to function, Stage 6 teaches it how to protect itself. Before we cross into that, let's lock in the mental models you're carrying forward. Services have an order, time first, then naming and addressing, then the eyes that watch them. DNS resolves, DHCP configures, NAT translates, QoS prioritizes, multicast scales one-to-many traffic. NTP underpins everything that depends on trust, and observability only works when you combine SNMP, SizeLog, and NetFlow. State, events, and conversations together. Think of this cheat sheet as your field reference and the one page you should be able to reconstruct from memory by the end of Stage 5. Deployment order across the top, port numbers and protocol shapes down the side, and the operational shorthand that ties them together. Dora for DHCP, classify mark queue schedule for QoS, stratum levels for NTP. If these 8 rows feel obvious now, the mental models are locked, and you're ready for what comes next. That brings Stage 5 to a close. And Stage 6 begins with Lesson 42, Security Fundamentals. We'll open with the CIA triad, build a working threat model, and layer in defense in depth, the same disciplined approach we've used all along, now applied to protecting everything we've deployed. I'll see you in the next lesson.